Welcome to You and AI, a live interview series focused on the impact of AI on humankind and the planet. I'm your host, Tiarne Hawkins. This interview series focuses on interviewing global stakeholders, musicians, politicians, celebrities, innovators, changemakers, technical experts, and so much more so we can cover all areas of artificial intelligence. Today's focus, we're going to be discussing generative AI, the future of entertainment media. With that, I would love to introduce our first guest, Chris Mattman. Chris Mattman is an international AI expert, author, professor. His work led to publishing the Panama Papers and the Pulitzer Prize in 2017. Hi, Chris.
Hey, Tiarne, how's it going? Pleasure to see you, and it's been too long.
Yes, it's been far, far too long. Where are you calling in from today?
I'm in Pasadena, California. This is just a clever background of the Mars rover. It's actually when we landed in 2020. This was drawn by the LA Times cartoonist Jim Thompson, and it's the rover making my face on Mars. So.
Oh my God, I love it. So, Chris, I have a quick question for you. Tell me, what is your favorite achievement in technology thus far?
Well, I mean, if you're talking about my own, you kind of cited there a little bit. It was all the work that we did in data forensics and, to basically publish the work and track down financial, basically money laundering networks with the Panama Papers. But in general, the thing that's got me excited is what we're going to talk about today is AI, generative AI, or the potential, things like ChatGPT, all of those things.
Super excited. Well, thank you so much. And with that, I would love to introduce our next speaker today, Keith Harris, Juno and two-time Grammy Award-winning record producer, songwriter, musician, director, drummer, multi-instrumental, and businessman. Hey, Keith.
How are you?
I'm good. Where are you dialing in from today?
All the way from by way of Woodland Hills today.
Oh, lovely. Well, great to have you. Thank you so much. And, as somebody who's always touring and on the road, I wanted to ask you, where's your favorite destination to play in the world?
I would say favorites as of last year, the show in front of the pyramids.
Oh, wow.
So very special indeed.
Wow, you're cutting out there a little bit.
Oh, yes. No.
Yes, I can hear you now. What was that?
Okay, yes. Cool. Giza. Playing in.
Never been.
It's beautiful.
Need to go. Well, thank you. It's so lovely to have you here. With that, our next guest is one of a dear friend of mine, Scott Page. Hi, Scott. Scott Page is an iconic saxophonist, rhythm guitarist. He's played with Pink Floyd, Toto, Superstamp, and now he's a technologist, a media disruptor. Hey, how are you, Scott?
I'm doing great. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here today because this subject is something we all need to talk about, right? This is a very important thing. I mean, we're going through some major changes right now, and clearly this tech is at the forefront, and I think a lot of people don't really have a clue what this means yet. So this is a great conversation. Very happy to be here.
Oh, it's so lovely to have you here. And that you kind of stole my question, which was going to be, what are you most excited about? But thank you, and super excited to kick this off. But our last guest today is John Swartz. He is an award-winning reporter, Dow Jones MarketWatch. You've written for Forbes. You're a co-author. You've been nominated 4 times for the Pulitzer Prize. Hey, John.
Hey, thanks for having me, T. This is a very impressive panel. I'm very excited to learn as much as give you my opinion on AI, and I might probably play the prototypical skeptical journalist for this.
Yes, and that's what we want. We want both sides of the coin here. So actually, just a quick question for you. What is one of your favorite moments in journalism?
Wow, I've been doing it for so long. I mean, it's hard to pinpoint it. For about 20 years, I worked at USA Today, and I got to meet a lot of interesting people and talk to them. So I got to interview Jobs about a dozen times and got to see the inside of what happened to that company from almost like the first-person perspective for years. So I find myself grateful for that and meeting some of these other titans who've had such an impact on this last 50 years of our lives and continuing to do so. And I think what's going to happen with AI in terms of arts
Yeah.
particularly in terms of music. I'm getting all sorts of interesting viewpoints from people about how they think it's going to become part of 90% of the pop songs going forward.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's
So
definitely the AI generative revolution is here. And with that, I want to kind of set the framing for today. So generative AI, it's here, it's not going anywhere. And today we can create images, videos, avatars, audio, music, copy of any kind, songs, coding, and so much more with just a natural language prompt. Some of the leading tools in this space include DeepMind, DALL-E, ChatGPT, as a lot of you have heard, which has had over 100 million downloads thus far and counting. And I think Elon Musk, after the first week of it coming out, tweeted, and clearly probably with good intent, why, right? That it's scary good and we're dangerously good we're very close to dangerously good AI. With that coming, and the industry for arts, media, entertainment, creators, marketing people, events managers, anybody that's in the content space, I think it's time to start having conversations between all of us from every single age demographic, whether you're a technologist, an artist, a creator, a media expert, because the impact of generative AI is yet to be seen, right? And with that, I would love to actually open up with you, Chris, to talk about what is generative AI? Could you kind of give the audience an overview of what generative AI is?
Yeah, absolutely, T. So basically, what generative AI is. So AI, basically in context, models the mind. It models the brain and the way that our brain works, especially today with neural networks and things like that. So the way that we see things, they study for many years our visual cortex and the ways that our eyes scan left to right in 5x5 patches. First, looking at kind of like lower level features, curves, lines, into higher level features, faces, eyes, hair, things like that. And so we studied that for a long time and we built models to do that. We did the same thing with the auditory complex with our ears and so forth. First, we watched the way that we transform waveforms, that our ears transform them, into actual digits, the way that we then have the digits reading in our minds left to right, if it's a left to right language, right to left, if it's Arabic, things like that, the way that we actually process those digits into language and speech. And that's where we got things like deep speech out of. So we learned a lot about these models over time for our eyes, for our ears, for things like that. What generative AI is given those models, we can actually ask the AI to think like we do. Given a model of an eye and the way that we recognize objects in it, instead of having, using it to recognize objects, dream up different objects that possibly don't exist. So you train it on all the images, on the internet of dogs and cats, of cars and things like that. Generative AI is, hey, AI model, why don't you think of, given all that knowledge you have, new faces, new cars, new trucks? Why don't you think of new sounds that don't exist? Why don't you think of new text that hasn't been written? And that's sort of the concept of generative AI. Given all that knowledge that we've trained it on, given all those models, let the model actually think and produce and output things for itself, either images, audio, text, and things like that.
So on that, what was the big breakthrough, right? Obviously, generic models, or the models that we've been used to for so long from an interactive standpoint, are looking for patterns in data. What is the differentiation between those old models and the new model?
I think one of the big, breakthroughs is in a couple different areas. First, we now have the computational power to generate reasonable likeness of things that the AI could, dream up. So in the past, like if I asked the AI to generate a dog, it was very easy to figure out or see artifacts, in that dog, something that possibly shouldn't be there, perhaps a dog with 3 ears or, a couple different noses, things that the AI couldn't figure out. But now the way basically human indiscernible, capability to kind of generate, these images, these sounds, these pieces of text, basically it's not discernible anymore. And that's due directly to the computational power, that exists and so on. So both the computational power, the realistic, life size, and actual believable images, text and things like that, and the ability to generate it in mass.
I love it. And just lastly, for the rest of the audience, what exactly is a prompt? I know that we, as these models came out, kind of developed the word prompt. But could you just explain to everybody what a prompt is?
Yeah, Tiarne, so the world's going to change. So instead of instead of programming, it's changing, every day, but it's even going to be changed directly by what you just asked. So instead of, having the AI or just letting it span the gamut of all the knowledge that it has, we can sort of direct the AI in different ways. We can say, if we're generating images, hey, sub-select down to this class of images. I'm interested in all the cars. I'm interested in all the artists, who are producing things. I'm interested in all this. We can use a prompt to sub-select it, and then we can also use things, and this has been from the field of language recognition, NLP, field that's near and dear to your heart, I know as well, basically to use that to constrain further the set of data that it basically dreams up or generates from. And, you can do how many of things, like show me, something in this artist style with many, many of them. It understands cardinality. It understands style. It understands other selections. So prompts are what we use to constrain the data that the AI uses to generate new data from.
And with that, though, prompting's not easy, right? Like there's still a very creative process to go through. I'm not a highly creative person, and I come up with very simplistic prompts, which I get simplistic images. But when I've read some of the more complex prompts out there, they're very detailed. And I think you start to see that generated in the images and the output of that model. So I think, things like prompt engineers, creators learning how to take what's inside their head, poets, songwriters, and actually to be able to put that into a prompt to generate an image. There's still an art in that. And with that, I would like to start talking to a couple of the others on the panel about how generative AI could potentially be used, whether it's writing a song, music, creating an album cover, maybe having some imagery for a video clip. So, hey guys, popcorn style, maybe we'll start with you, Keith, and then go from there.
Well, I think as a creator and artist, workflow flow tremendously. Like you, specific on what it is your idea, it's gonna like excel. And for me, when we went from 2-inch tape, I feel like this is that next thing where we're to AI generation. So I think it's pretty exciting. And it's our 8 and 4. They love the art into it big time. So the future would be, and especially for creators, like I said, think about what it is they want to do. This tool will.
Oh, I think we're losing you there. You know what? We're talking about generative AI and the future of tech, and half the time we battle with streaming. So everybody, please bear with us there, Keith. Let's circle back to you, Keith. Maybe Scott, how do you think generative AI could be used for entertainment, media, and some of the areas that you're seeing?
Well, for me, I've been a technologist for a long time and have been following a lot of technology through the years and been through everything from CD-ROM and then going to the internet and all those things.
Yeah.
But I see, I'm mixed about this because as a technologist, I can see the tool, how powerful it is, what it can do. But at the other side, I think one of the conversations we have to have is how dangerous this is as far as what it means for art. The biggest thing for me that scares me is the ability to kind of control these algorithms to be trained in specific ways to deliver content. I'm very concerned about, I'm a musician. I want to go it. So I'm going to go up and I'm going to type in stuff to write the lyrics. But are those lyrics going to be biased? And are they going to basically create a narrative? I think that's the most dangerous thing about this whole thing, and especially for art. And for me, a lot of the generative art that I've seen so far, it's fascinating to me because it lacks a sense of soul, right? And I can see the art and I look at it and I go, but it's a different thing. There's a sense of soul. So I'm one of those that I can see the power of it. I use it for copywriting and I use it in these things. And I also see that I believe humans are designing themselves out. I mean, because you can see the vast amount of people that are going to be out of work, right? I mean, this thing is about to just stomp marketing. It's going to stomp the music because it puts everybody in the game, right? And in a different way. Definitely, the power of it used if we have conscious human beings using it. I see it's incredible. If we don't, and we use human behavior, which scares me, I think we're going to see things that are not going to be so pleasant. And uh, I think we're going to see. I mean, it's crazy that I can just go type in, "Hey, I need a score that sounds like I need a 10-minute piece of music that sounds like a cross between John Williams and Danny Elfman and stuff," and I hit a button, stuff is there.
Yeah.
So you can see it. So my feeling about this is a powerful tool. How do we manage it in a way as for humankind for basically to make this happen? So I'm one of those that's a little concerned. Obviously, being a technologist for years, I understand technology pretty well.
Yeah.
And what's so fascinating is we see us humans only really talking like the main thing is about, wow, look how cool this is. Look what we can make. Look what we can do. We need to start thinking about the other aspects of what this is all about so that we understand where we're going, so we can try to, hopefully, because listen, nothing can stop it. This is a train that's just coming at a very, very fast now. I mean, the next 24 months is going to be insane. And for me, it's this, I look at AI, it's like it has no feeling. Right. So it's kind of more like the ego. I'm a consciousness nut. Everything about me is I eat, drink, sleep, consciousness. That's the most important thing in my life, period. And so I see we've got to be very careful because this has a lot of implications on humankind and the music business and the industry and art and everything else we're doing right now.
And you know what? You're 100% right. And I think that's where conversations like today are really, really important. It's looking at the good and the bad. It is here. It's moving at a pace that a lot of us, if we just ignore it, will be out of opportunities, will be out of jobs. But for those that want to enhance what they're doing, right?
Yep.
Because it's not easily to get to the output. Like you said, right? You have a creative idea and you want to mash two artists and you want to think about that's still your unique prompt, your unique creative process coming together to look for an output. So I'm going to go a little bit more on the for today, just purely because I think there's a couple for and against here. I'm very interested to see how creative artists can use it to actually get that quicker output. That said, yes, it is going to replace jobs. It is going to, take out some of the market that, graphic designers and others that obviously spend hours, days, months creating these bits of artwork. That said, though, does the human element change? Does the human then interact differently with something that's digital art versus still that feeling of soul from an original artist? And I think we don't quite know that. We don't. So, John, I haven't had the chance yet to hear from you. What are your thoughts on generative AI and the uses in media and entertainment?
Well, it's interesting what Scott said. I totally agree about this lacking soul and kind of this generic approach to everything, whether it be images or music or in the future stories, news stories, because we're going to definitely see this. So I'm kind of looking at this from a perspective of caution, which is warranted, because in a sense, AI has become the latest, most ballyhooed flavor of the month for tech, right? Before it was Web3, metaverse, crypto, what have you, all promising to make seismic changes to our society and our economy. And that's to a certain extent true. I think AI is further along than those, as it turns out. Indeed, actually in the tech industry, every tech CEO during earnings calls this month talked about AI. Yeah. They're doing that within the context of the ad sales decline and their own revenue declines. So they see this as this great white hope, so to speak. So there's a lot of momentum behind it. But on the flip side, there's also a lot of things that we should be afraid of, fearful of. Yeah. I mean, if AI does for music what it did to customer service, journalism, potentially DJs, it's going to cost a lot of people jobs. And it's also going to create this vanilla, artificial, so to speak, experience, maybe across the arts. I don't know if that's true. I've heard from a few people who've talked about some of the music they've listened to where the quote unquote musician can't read music or play an instrument, but has been able to program something that sounds actually quite impressive. So it's in a sense, it's also gonna upturn what is already an industry in tumult, right? The music industry. It's what happens in terms of copyrights or in terms of who gets the credit for a song sales or a video. In a sense, it is very scary to me in its potential impact. It's going to be great for advertisers and agencies, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But one other thing I want to mention too is that generative AI will maybe create these great songs, but they also might have zero creativity at the same time. Right. Where you might have pop music so now we have pop music industrially composed, produced, and distributed. This takes it to the nth degree. So I just would add caution to this. And as somebody who covers markets, there's a huge degree of skepticism about the accuracy of AI, about its intrusion into our lives, and what it could do under the wrong hands, especially among some of the tech companies that are getting into music and pushing harder into music. And I won't name them, but we can talk about them later.
Yeah.
We definitely
don't name them yet.
Totally agree, my friend. I'm with you 100%. This is something we all have to really, really, really be cautious about right now. And it's up to us, the people that understand this stuff, to make sure we don't gloss over the things that are really important, because this is a humanity play. This is humankind. This is like a big kind of shift in everything we do, because what happens in 15 years when everybody uses this stuff and it's so easy? What happens to the human consciousness of the people? Are we still learning the same? I mean, if kids are like off, wanting to be influencers and they're doing all their homework, just typing stuff in, what am I learning, right? So there's just so many questions we have to ask. And it's an interesting time, to say the least.
It certainly is. And I think if you look at the rate in which it's changing, right, it's phenomenal. It's the next 5 years is going to be the biggest change in history for technology, entertainment, digital currencies, the whole lot coming together under one roof, right? So, but on that, right, if we were to think about what makes a good song, what makes a poem, what makes a story, is it not soul? Is it not the context? Is it not the narrative? Because the one thing generative AI cannot do, or cannot do yet, right, but cannot do at the moment, is write a book from a point of view, right? The full book, the full narrative. It cannot link the full creative story, right? It's very good at generating an idea, and where I see the best use case for it is actually that foundational idea that allows you to go and create on top. But if everything's saturated with digital art just generated by AI, I'm optimistic that the average person is going to start to actually have a different feeling and connection to what it would to something that was your favorite artist, right? Why do we go to a concert? You go to a concert to see your artist play. You have an emotional experience, maybe to a song or a time in your life that you really connected with them. I don't think AI is going to replace that anytime soon.
Hey, can I ask a question of the musicians? Actually, I don't mean to steal your time and ask a question, but what do you all, Scott and Keith, what do you think of this? Like, T mentioned the live concert, and part of the appeal to me is something that's improvised. Maybe there's a mistake that's made, which actually raises the tension, and maybe something happens. It's magic, like something happens that's not planned. And yet we have like these instances of like the ABBA band on stage. I'm not pointing fingers at them, but just these holograms, and then we're going to probably see maybe more AI intrusion into a show. It just kind of, to me, like strips away the magic and the live electricity, anticipation of what can happen, and almost kind of marginalizes and turns it into this generic vanilla output.
Well, there's no question from my point of view. Remember, the whole thing that really happens is when certain musicians come together, the chemistry, and where the conscious kind of merges together. We're seeing so much now the machines are kind of taking over. And this was an interesting observation. We did last year, I produced the events for NFT LA, and we're getting ready to do that again, by the way. So everybody join. It's going to be a great year this year. We did 2 nights, which was fascinating, at Wisdom LA, where the first night we did our show live band. We did a whole Pink Floyd thing with this all-star band, and it was all this music of live players and stuff. And the place was set up, all the sponsors, all the rooms, all the different places. I mean, it was a completely set up. That night was magical. There was a sense of camaraderie that was happening. The second night, we had a very famous DJ, and I'm not putting down the DJ side of this thing, but I had a very interesting observation that well, the second night it was Steve Aoki. All right, I'll just tell you, it was Steve Aoki came in the night. Nothing changed in that venue. That night, there was like 800, 900 people in this place. It was indoors, outdoors. Nothing changed except for the music. And you could feel an entirely different shift. I'll never, it was so profound to me to see how people felt about it, because there's a sense of this boom, 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 that's hypnotic, that goes down and feeds on you at a totally different level than this whole thing of like free form and jazz, where people are kind of surfing with you and feeling it's almost anticipated. So, you know, there is a very interesting side to this electronic and what it does to the psyche. So I personally, everything for me, I mean, the great records that stand the test of time, it was when we were all in the room. Those records still there and everybody was in the room, and we may do 3 takes of the song. And each take is totally different. You'll find like take 2 was just smoking. We played the same song twice, but something else happened. And that magic is what I'm seeing kind of getting dissipated out of the music business, which is really where all the soul is. And it's really playing more on the, what I would sort of want to say, the dark elements of who we are as humans, as opposed to playing on the light side. So there's a lot. This is a very crazy time when it comes to how we're going to interact, because the machines, because here's the big one. We may not be right now, but remember, everybody's writing these prompts and they're putting data into this system. We're just teaching it how we think, right? More and more every day. Millions of people are just freaking adding data into this thing. And, you know, when quantum comes along and we start getting into where it's not just on or off or, you know, yes or no, we've got now, maybe what happens, it's going to get very interesting. So I agree with you. I think that's the thing that we have to be really careful. Now, I believe consciousness will win in this game at the end, because I think that's where we're going at the overall. But it's going to be definitely very interesting times to see how this plays out.
Sorry, I'm muted there. Amazing answer, honestly. And it's so good to hear. It's the opposite of the positivity, right? Which is so important so people understand. On the positive side, though, from a generation standpoint, let's focus just on what it can do now, currently,
Yep.
What you're using it for, right? You said you're using it for copy. I know that, is he still on? Yes, Keith, you're down there. Hey, Keith, I know you dropped in out. Love to hear what you were saying as well and bring you back in. And then obviously Chris coming over the top with just more of the technical elements and kind of thinking about how you're using it and how you're seeing it even in universities. I'm just going to plant all of that and let you conversate and kind of go from there.
Oops.
Oh, I can't hear you at all. Technology. See, this is where you need an AI avatar, a digital twin. You could just have it talking for you.
Your AI tech guy that's going to go in and fix your settings for you.
Chris, we might pan over to you now. We can't hear you.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to see if Keith got the mojo back, but it looks like ChatGPT is fighting him. Is that him? Is he there? Okay. I couldn't tell if
hear me? Hello.
We can hear you now.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. The whole time. Just let me know when you can't hear me.
Okay, we can hear you.
From agree that this is really going to like bring people together in live experience. Have all these different and manufacture, but everybody was looking to be on a stage, looking to be in the same room together, and creators that can capitalize of a live experience. The next platform.
No, I can't hear you. And it's so like frustrating because I'm sure what you're saying is there's so many gold nuggets in there.
Could you log out and log back in maybe?
Yeah, log out and log in. We'll let you back in again. Yeah, so Chris Mattman, over to you.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a tough act to follow. Look, I think the couple things that you wanted me to kind of at least opine in on, and I'll try and, thread the needle at least between what John and Scott were talking about. I kind of have a double-edged sword, perspective on AI, kind of knowing, what this generative AI can do. I think it's really powerful. I'm always, folks who see change, coming with it. I mean, the folks that if the folks that did horse-drawn carriages and buggies, definitely didn't want to see the change of cars eventually. But
Yeah.
fundamentally, we needed that, right? I live right by the 110 freeway in Pasadena. Now, one of the side effects or unintended consequences for that is you've got a freeway that spans and connects, downtown LA to Pasadena that no one was ever meant to go faster than 55 miles an hour on. And, it's this winding, scary freeway, and it's, everybody drives 90 on it now, and it's insane. So, that's a little bit of an analogous thing related to, AI and so forth, is obviously, we need advancements in this generative capabilities. Some of these things will fundamentally allow us to achieve things that today are not possible. But that said, it's got to be done not in a maligned way, but in an ethical way with, bounds, with proper, kind of things for that. So just kind of tying it into at least, maybe some of the things where you see, like, I think a lot, I deal a lot. I'm a university professor in addition to being at NASA JPL. I'm at USC. And this is fundamentally changing not just creators from a perspective of music and sound, and we have some of the best artists here and journalists and things like that. It's fundamentally changing creators in the context of code development. So I got students now that are learning data science and machine learning at USC that, we all learn Python and Java to do all these things, TensorFlow and PyTorch. And believe it or not, the prompts are actually there in the context of code too. No longer are people going to go to Stack Overflow and, figure out how to drop in the code to do a particular type of sort or build a type of model related to this. They're going to ask a generative AI, like Sydney, hopefully not Venom, the mean one for Microsoft. We like the nice one, Sydney, but, whatever. They're going to ask one of those models, and that model's going to give them working code. I had a network engineer come to me the other day, who I work with at JPL and also is a USC guy. And he told me, like, look, I used to make all these sort of firewall network configs, code them by hand and whatever. He said, now ChatGPT can generate a 99% correct version of one of these network configs that I drop in the firewall, and it works across multiple platforms. I mean, that's scary. It's scary and it's good. That is enhancing his job. And so what he's going to have to do is the same thing that's coming with truckers who typically drove the California to Texas route or things like that. And, in 5 years, there's going to be a smart car, smart truck that, does that for them. You look at those unintended consequences for that. Obviously, those truckers, what are they going to do instead of driving 18-hour shifts? Well, to your point, T, we need to get them into prompt generation. We need to extract their subject matter expert knowledge. And if you think about it in a way, and this sort of maps a little bit back to what Scott was saying, that's the creativity process, but we need some soul in the prompt generation too. I feel you. So.
Hey, Chris, I totally agree with what you said. It made me think about something. It's, in a sense, we can achieve progress with AI in an ethical manner. And I think about when the internet came upon us, there was some skepticism about it, but there's still more skepticism about it. But it also led to improved writing and creativity, especially for a reporter and chasing down data accurately and finding things you could never have found before. I mean, pre-internet. And I think with AI, I have to also look at the other side and see that the music could become personalized, innovative, and even boundary pushing with the right artist collaborating or co-developing with the technology at the same time. So I just want to acknowledge that. I don't want to paint this with a broad negative brush, but I actually do see an upside, and I think it will happen. I'm just always afraid of companies like Meta in particular.
You said you were going to name them.
I couldn't help myself. I'm near the end of my career, so now I don't care anymore. I'm just going to say,
right.
Right. Exactly. Right. So
what's
Google's another one.
What's interesting about this, though, this is different than the horse and buggy. This is different than everything else because this has the power to manipulate thinking. Like, if this is a total on a global scale. I mean, we can't kid ourselves. This is a big deal. And the problem is the bias. We're already seeing bias being programmed in that. So if I'm going to write a song and I go to this thing and it writes the song and it's biased towards a specific thing, that gets a little bit wacky. And that's the thing that frightens me the most, because whoever controls those algorithms wins. We've already seen what it's done in just the internet, right? What AI and stuff, and basically programming, dividing the people and creating narratives and making us go these ways. So imagine now, this is like a whole next level of this that we're talking about. So my question is how do we put protections in place to allow us to use the power of this tech? Because I'm a tech guy. I look at this stuff and I'm totally blown away. I mean, it's incredible. But then at the other hand, I'm a consciousness person and I'm about mankind and humankind. And this is when anybody says that, you know, hey, this was like a horse and buggy, or what, this is totally different, man. This is like at the manipulation level of humankind.
Think about it, Scott. I was thinking about this really bad, dark scenario. It's almost borderlines on creepy, where you have a political candidate for a major office and they create a song or an anthem for them, right? With, in a weird sense, like subliminal messaging, with where it affects the mood or rallies people for the wrong reasons. It's like taking what Tipper Gore's ridiculous argument, but then applying it in a realistic manner that affects many more people almost instantly. So anyway, I
just got off the phone with a friend of mine. He's a CTO of a big AI company. He said they had to cancel some of the models they were using because they were using CNN as the model builder. So whatever, all the information coming off of CNN was feeding the engine, and they're getting these subjective pieces. Dude, this is scary. This is like not good when you have a bias being built into this stuff. That's where we've got to be very careful. And my goal is like, how do we protect that and make it so that we have access to making sure that certain people, certain things, certain agendas don't drive this, what's going on? Is it possible? I'd ask the experts. I'm not an expert in the tech of all this. I just know that I'm already seeing what it's doing. I'm already seeing the kind of things that it can do, and I understand it from at least from a higher level point of technology. But let me ask a question: What would the people here? How do you see to protect this bias? How do we control the bias and make sure that it is free and open thinking? Is there a way? Is there any way?
Yeah, I mean, so I'll just throw in on that, Scott, real quick. You know, I think there are several places that, you know, we could kind of address that. You know, and I thought about this a little bit. You know, it's funny you're talking about, you know, this as it relates to creativity and copyrights and things like that. I remember being a DVD owner and a Blu-ray owner and a Laserdisc owner for so many years, and I thought, God, I'm never going to get rid of these. Wow, I used to, you know, touch my movies with John Candy in them, you know, organize them and sort them so efficiently and all of that. You know how many DVDs and Blu-rays and all that I own today? Zilch. I sold myself to Apple. You know, I am a happy Apple whatever, and Apple TV, whatever the, you know, the content library is. And, you know, the foundations of that are some of the things that you guys are talking about that are going to be lending themselves to this bias. The foundations of that are DCMA, digital rights management, and also things that a bunch of people, I think, like I was actually skeptical of that, you know, back in the day. I didn't download anything off of BearShare illegally. Why would anyone have done that? But anyways, I know people that did, and those that did, you know, back in the day and all that, like I think scoffed at digital rights protections, and they eventually became sort of, you know, baked into all of the frameworks for this. So a couple things for ethics that I think are similarly going to happen. First, in the model training, you know, and it's the truth. These stories that you hear, they're not myth. When they built the early versions of the smart cars, they didn't train it on data that included people in wheelchairs or people of color or things like that. And guess what? You know, we want those cars to stop when they see them. And we had a big issue with that. So the training data bias is something that we need to address. We need to have balanced, diverse data to train these models on. The second thing is when they make predictions, you know, unlike the weathermen and women, although, you know, today it's getting better, we'd like them to actually give their confidence, you know, when they make those predictions. Don't just tell us the answer. Tell us how strongly you believe it, you know. And in fact, that'll even help the models become more like, you know, capture your point that you're talking about, Scott, the consciousness element. One of the reasons we're conscious is that we're not binary, and there's a lot of gray area until we get to quantum, and there's a whole bunch more gray area, right? So there's things like that. You know, we want precision, we want confidence, and we need to talk about things like that, too. And then finally, like you said, the IP, the governments, the framework, for that, I believe there's a rich realm in there under which we could, probably lawyers are salivating at this, and things, and they ought to be, because I think that there's a huge framework, and John, you made reference to that, where, people can kind of suss that out. And those are some of the things I think we could work on.
So there was a New York Times op-ed by Congressman Ted Lieu, who's in Southern California. He has an engineering background, and he is advocating a agency of some sort to oversee AI. But what always gives me pause, and especially since I write about government and technology, is that no laws are ever passed. They haven't had major legislation in tech for 20 years, and there's a reason why there's this huge disconnect between the Beltway and the technology arena. Yeah,
you can see right now. I mean, just look at what's going on with the major news networks, because they got caught, right? They're caught in driving things in ways that the people aren't liking, right? And so if that's the case, and we're watching that go down, where you got 6 corporations running all the media, all that stuff, you can see how they've controlled the thought so far. You add this element into it, and if you have control of those algorithms, and you just say, I mean, if you already seen the test where they're asking questions about the same thing about 2 different people, and sometimes it'll come up and say, oh, I don't want to talk about them because they're too controversial. Oh, but this person is really wonderful, right? You see that too. I worry about that in music, in lyrics, because music sets culture. It sets stuff. You start putting that bias in the way it writes the lyrics, and you start building all that. You can see how you can just mold society into an entirely different structure. I mean, it's crazy, right? So it's fun and it's cool, and I love it to death. And I can see how from a using as an artist, how I can use this to be incredible tool set. Yeah. I'm just worried about what happens later on as the tool set, as we maybe not get we get too used to using this tool, and less about trying to use our own brains to try to keep stimulation and creativity going on and all those things. Because listen, when I play, there's certain things that I'll do at times it'll trigger things for me. But if I don't need to do that, I mean, it's like so crazy now. I go and do sessions, right? I go do a recording session, and before it was like, okay, I'm going to do 3 takes top to bottom. Here we go. Let's see what happens. And you had to be really good, and hopefully you captured that moment. Now I go in and I play 3 takes. And that's good enough. Doesn't matter. I come back, they flip it, they change it, they retune it, they do all these things to it. They create another piece of art with it. But it's not me anymore. It's like a different thing. I was almost like just an object that was added into the process. It's fascinating, kind of where we're going with all this.
Yeah, and on that, Keith, I hope you have audio, because we're dying to hear your thoughts.
Can you hear me now?
Kind of, but let's give it a go.
I'm not sure what's going on, but I'm excited about creator.
Yep.
Can you no? Yeah. No?
Kind
yes.
of.
Goes in and out.
Keep going.
Okay. I'll speak slowly. Think we give our next a lot of credit. From where we've come as musicians, people in society that are learning this now are great for the future.
Yeah.
Of the way we came up in creating music, these kids, like you said, they're doing, and they're mashing it in a whole different version, or even thought of, which is amazing. I really feel that this tool is going to help. It's going to help us. My kids, when he turns my age, just imagine, like you said, prompt description tools, how he'll be able to be so fast.
Yeah.
My youngest son. So just imagine if I could tell him, study being a pilot, GPT or some program that can give you that you would normally have to go to a college. For me, just the technology and the information itself as a creator, and the next generation of creators that's going to take and kill it leaps and bounds. Just like you guys said with the creation of the internet, all were like, oh, what is the internet? I don't know it. Of course, we all adapted. We've learned how it can manipulate and be biased. You know, we're still kicking, and I give ourselves a little bit more credit. Us as human beings with a human connection come from a lot of bias. A man of color, absolutely based on the human connection. Definitely needed and is definitely celebrated. These new tools, if we use them as creators for good, I think we can do some things for the world and for the future. And I also
do you think it levels? Oh, I'm sorry, Keith. Do you think that these tech tools would like level the playing field for like smaller non-signed artists? Do you think it would help them, or if they don't have access to resources to record?
But it's still. Can you hear me?
It's cutting in and out. Yeah, you're cutting, and you have like so many gold nuggets here on the positive.
I know, it's such a Drake.
Yeah. Well, I'll throw in one idea I had related to Keith, and maybe that'll buy him some time for his stuff to kind of come through. Keith, I just wanted to share one thing.
Hey, can you hear me now?
We can hear you. We can hear you. Can everyone else hear him?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Can you
go
hear
ahead,
me?
Keith.
Yes.
That's better.
Oh, I was saying. I hope you guys can hear me now. Those people that wouldn't have the opportunity and all of these things to be able to the internet did, it's going to come down to each person's because that's something that you can't duplicate. That what you see, and what I think about a piece of duplicate that from peer to peer. But what's going to separate who uses their own creativity, construct the AI. That's what I.
Yeah, we're losing you. I think I'm going to try to summarize in piece for that, Keith, and actually would love to get your opinion maybe in a pre-record after this for anyone that wants to follow up. And I'm seeing there's so many comments. I'm not sure if you guys can see it there, but there's a bunch of comments coming in live at the moment saying that you rock and they want to talk about the positives as well. So Keith, you're kind of saying you see it as a positive. You think that for the younger generation, they're going to morph this, take this somewhere else. It's going to give them the opportunity to open up other creative elements. And in short, I mean, I would love to hear fully what you were saying, but in short, you're thinking that you would like to think humanity has a bit of good in it. And I do think things need to be governed. There's this idea of watermarking and understanding when you are interacting with something that's fully generative from an AI perspective. There's all of these different things that people are now talking about to be able to put policies and procedures in place and bring it back to like horse and cart, right? I know it's like a really crazy analogy, but I kind of like where we were taking that. Horse and cart went to driving on roads with cars, which are governed. There's rules, right? There's state rules. There's all of these. I mean, I love driving, but I can only go the speed limit, right? I'd love to break it, but I'm not going to break it, right? Because that's the rule.
Well, maybe AI will have its own Ralph Nader, right? Initially, you eventually need somebody as a guardrail, right? No matter where it is. And technology is always harder though than the auto industry, which is an ongoing problem. It's always technology is always ahead of the legislators, and by the time they catch up, it's gone quantum leaps ahead of them. So that's what always makes it trickier.
Like many things that are happening right now, a lot of the things as it relates to guard nails and everything else, folks, too, is they're regional based. So the EU is leading in a lot of the guardrails as it relates to data right now, as it relates to AI. And to be honest, you look in other communities or whatever related to AI, and then talk about breaking the speed limit. Again, like there's always there's a net effect to anything, right? Tiarne, to everything else. It's like, well, if you never broke the speed limit, would you need police? I mean, so obviously, there are reasons and rationale, and or would you need, at least in California, CHP, traffic police, right, or things like that. Not regular police, but just whatever. So, there are things to kind of think about related to that. So, China, as an example, has very little guardrails in AI. Today, as an example, they're willing to deploy facial recognition, indiscriminately throughout their, nation and things like that. And, this is an interesting quote, not experiment, but we can learn a lot from what's happening, in the ways that they're deploying their AI, and they're little or no guardrails. There was a report that recently came out from Eric Schmidt, used to be the head of Google, who did a national security report for AI that's talking about where the U.S. is vis-a-vis, some of our, other foreign nations, China and other places. And as it turns out, in some of these areas, we're behind. And again, so we have to look at it at a regional level. We've got to, follow what some of the EU is doing and some of their data guardrails. Look at that. Obviously the Western, alignment of some of these other countries will cause us to evolve in a particular way right now, for AI. And so those are some of the things we're going to have to attack it, unfortunately, at a regional level.
Well, yeah, if you look at the way China's using it right now, there's a really good lesson to be learned right there, right? We're seeing, social credit score. We're looking at the CBDC coin that they're trying to put us all on. You start adding AI into that model, things really get dicey, right? And I tell everybody, the most important thing is do not get on centralized system. If that happens, humanity is done. Can you imagine AI driving a central currency? I mean, it's a game. And if you look at what's happening, like in China, they're showing you the model, right? Because it's a control point. You've got your credit score, you've got all those things that are there, and they basically say, I didn't like what you said. You're like, shut up. And you're going to have some AI that's based on some kind of stuff managing all of those relationships. So this is deep, right? It's very, very, very deep. And again, going back to the music side of it, I see the power of the tool. And I think for those that can think about how to use this and tie their pieces together, it's going to be an incredible types of things they can do. But all the rest, it's going to be troublesome, right? Because it's just like this. We democratized. We're in the music business, right? Yeah, here it is. Everybody can create content now. All the tools, I got this stuff, and that's fantastic. The problem is everybody can create content right now, right? Because what happens is how do I rise above the noise? If I'm a content creator, how do I build my business? How do I actually make things happen? And that's why I think, NFTs, I'm a big NFT component, all decentralized, whole idea of NFTs. I think that's one of the greatest tools that ever came along for mankind, in the sense it allows us to build a complete direct-to-consumer business model. I don't need the third party. I got this little freaking robot network over here handling all my rights, roles, and permissions, doing all my stuff for me. Fantastic. And I can see how it's all about building what I'll call a hive. So I believe the new model is, if you want to survive, you got to build a hive. That's the game right now. It's all about building those people and bringing communities. So maybe there's some way that AI, but we've got to say decentralized. The thing that bothers me is this one brain basically having all the freaking horsepower, right? Because it's like one person, you could say, yeah, all the bias, but that whoever controls that brain is basically going to dictate how things go from a culture point of view. And us as artists and stuff are going to help drive that. Because again, I typed it, a guy did a thing the other day, write a love song about AI or whatever. And he came back and he was like, holy crap, it was an unbelievable song, right? And he just put some lyrics to it and he was off and running. Right, he wrote this tune. So you can see how there's certain kinds of cool value from a creative point of view to help prompt. Like one of my friends, he says he's got that open up all day. He's using that tool all day long for his work, all day long, and it's fantastic. The problem, the human condition. Who controls the?
That would be. It would really be interesting, Scott, if you had like a modern day Lennon McCartney or Simon and Garfunkel, where the AI creates the music, and then you have the person who's gifted at the lyrics, right?
Yeah.
You get like a songwriting team that becomes the most popular. I mean, it just would boggle them. I mean,
yeah. I mean, we haven't even scratched the surface of the power and the positivity of this. There's a definitely very big positive side if it's used and if people have the right control of it, there's no question. I mean, this is creativity at its highest level in ways of using this tech, combining it with what I'm doing. I've got art friends that are building certain things and they're arting with it and painting over it. It's just creating a whole new kind of way to create. The question is we just need to not get caught up in just that part of it and not realize what we're doing by programming this thing to think and like, how do we harness this? And that's my whole thing, is just try to figure it out, because it's a cool time right now, because I think it's the greatest time in history for the independent artist. Like, there's never been a time when you start thinking the power of what an NFT can do, because most people don't understand what NFTs are. They think it's like this ape picture tied to the blockchain. No, it's way beyond that. I mean, this changes commerce, the way we interact with things, it is the model. I think it's the greatest model. That whole NFT side is freedom for me, for the people, if it's used right. It gets in again, whether or not how it gets access and who controls those algorithms, all the things that go along with it is really where we're at. So again, thought leader, all these people, like all of us, we just need to make sure we try to help move this in a positive direction. That's my dream anyway.
Yeah. And I think positive direction and having these conversations is like, that's the point. We all need to start talking about it. I do still feel though, there's something magic in the word you said around community, and the reason why you join a community and what that following is. It's not necessarily just about an art or a digital image or a digital video. There is still an essence of that creative flow behind it. And I think I'm hoping that element for artists, right? Independent artists, especially when they're thinking about building their community, they're then using tools that cut down time, cut down costs, giving them the ability to have a competitive edge. And it's from around the world, any market, right? Like, you no longer have to have the largest wallet to get in and to be an artist. If you're a creative kid anywhere in the world right now, you have the ability to spin up some sort of channel, start to create content, understand creative prompts, communicate in multiple different languages, right? Communicate with audiences in multiple different languages, and potentially post an article, which you might be a great writer, right? But you just can't afford the artwork. Like, there are so many creative people out there that are missing one or the other element. So I'm kind of hoping that the positive side of people using this as a foundation for creative ideas, a foundation to build their ideas, a foundation to get ideas out there. I think if something was fully generated AI, like everything from the song to the creative elements to an avatar performing it to where's the source, right? To an avatar running the community, where's the secret source in that? And what are you then engaging with? And I don't know if humans would follow a full avatar AI, full generated from artwork to songs to music, unless it was an artist behind it posing, right? It's like
unless you're a great marketer.
Unless you're a great marketer, right?
But there's still, remember, NFTs, all this stuff is all about the story. If you're a story writer and you can create story, you can make anything happen. They sold a pet rock, right? A rock, right? They bottled water. It is more expensive than gasoline, right? So, I mean, it's all about the story, right? So that's really the key. So great storytellers with this tool set could create things that, that are just, that's the deal. So it definitely brings a lot of people in the game. My fear is that certain people are going to have the power and other people are not going to have the power, right? It's going to get concentrated, because when you look at it from an artist point of view, for me, I'm already seeing all kinds of ways that I can use this like crazy. It'll speed up my processes. It'll help me create stuff. It's already helping me come up with words and things that I didn't even think about and stuff like that. So from that point of view, as an artist, it's crazy cool. I can see bringing it in. But then you start looking at, well, maybe I don't quite understand it yet. And later on, am I going to be the ones that are going to control this? Do I have the story capabilities and think to rise above the noise and make it happen? We'll see. That's the thing. It's a little interesting.
So with that, we're at time. I mean, an hour just flies by. I feel like in these sessions, I always wish I'd booked 2 or 3. But you're all extremely busy, and I'm so thankful you're here today. I would like to just go around quickly, starting with John. Just closing comments and anything where our audience can follow you, follow what you're writing about, follow any other panels or any of the other areas that you might be talking about generative AI or any topics in technology?
Well, honestly, I don't cover AI, but I'm interested in it only because it is so often mentioned by the executive. Actually, while we were talking, I got several AI pitches, including one from Salesforce. They're going to have a big AI event. So everyone's getting involved, even like a Salesforce is pushing the envelope, right? Exactly. They all see the opportunity. Tim Cook was talking about it at Apple. One thing I'm going to say is I actually think there is a very great opportunity. I mean, like the internet let anybody become a reporter, whether good or bad, but it also allowed a lot of people who didn't have the opportunity to share their expertise and share their brilliance. And I think the same thing could happen with AI and music or any type of art for the underrepresented, especially those who don't have access to resources. Remember, again, tech tools made it possible for a number of individuals who did not have the financial backing to start companies. You didn't have to have all the infrastructure. You didn't have to buy it. You didn't have to put it in place. So I think this could actually, in the end, and eventually will have a positive impact. It's just good that we talk about it and acknowledge the downside, because technology, as we all know, has upsides and downsides. Remember the whole Facebook, Twitter, this community, we're all going to communicate better than ever. Like we've never been more at odds with one another than we are now at times, right? And in Twitter, I mean, I don't use Twitter as much as I used to, just because I almost don't want to be affiliated with it, right? Based on some of the content there. So that's just what I wanted to say. And I'm glad we were able to do this. I thought this was a great conversation with incredibly smart. You guys are all incredibly smart. I was like, learned so much. I'm taking notes actually while we're talking. So anyway, thanks for having me. I'm at Dow Jones. I'm just Jay Swartz. I would give you my Twitter handle, but I don't use it anymore. I actually post on LinkedIn now. Seriously.
Perfect. Yeah, you're one of the speakers in the event. So if anyone wants to connect with John, you can see him.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from you.
In the event. Yeah, so follow John. Chris, what about you?
Similar feelings. This was a wonderful conversation. It's nice to put face and a voice to names, that we've been kind of preparing for this event in. So it's a pleasure. And overall, the comment I would have is that, I look to where we're going with AI with, I think a lot of positivity. It's measured, but just what it's going to do and what it's already doing, I definitely see the positives outweighing the negatives eventually. There'll be some bumpy parts along the way, and there's a lot of work to be done, but that's the way I feel. And if you want to catch up with me, I'm Chris Mattman, 2 M's, 2 A's, 2 T's, 2 N's on all the socials, and mattman.ai. I've become an AI. That's my website. So thank you.
Thanks. And I'm going to go to you, Keith, and then Scott, and I'll close out with some comments.
Well, I'm not sure if you guys can hear me.
We can now.
I'm not sure what's going on with the Wi-Fi. Sincerely sorry about this. Enjoyed talking with everyone here. Learned so much. Outlook for it. Like you said, serve the underserved creatives, a new creativity, to really make you like, I really like this. I really love what I do. Appreciate that. Somebody else. So as a creator and music producer, I would miss the AI now and not so. It's really motivating, get on my game and really, like we said, the bad side, regulate it, and having biases in which I think I have the people in place to regulate. They're good, but once again, follow me at all of these socials at Keith, and thank you guys for having me today and for the Wi-Fi.
Thank you, Keith and Scott.
So my final conversation or closing comments is, listen, our job, all of us, everybody here, is one thing: to help consciousness unfold, right? That's it. You blink, you're 50, you blink, you're on your deathbed, time's an illusion. I mean, the whole thing. So our job as people in this space, I just say that we all need to be very smart about this one and actually get educated. More people need to understand. They need to jump into this space. They need to start figuring this out because it's going to impact every aspect of everyone's lives like we've never seen before. I mean, just look at it. I just looked at actually a friend of mine's on John Greenwood talking about the copyright things. I mean, just think about what that's going to do for copyrights and what they just did. And I mean, all the things going on. So my whole thing is this. There's such a positive side to this. At the same time, there's a dark side to this, and we just need to guide it as humanity and help make it. And the more people that learn about what the upsides and the downsides are and how we use this for positive good, I think that's going to be very important. And again, I think when you start tying this technology along with what the blockchain can start to bring together, where for basically authenticating things and creating things, and it's an incredible time for the creative forces out there. Because you can see what we're about to be able to do. I mean, my company right now, we use AI. I mean, it's built into our product, right?
Yeah,
so I'm totally an advocate, and it helps us so much. It's streamlined a process that we need to do that's just completely changed the game, right? And it's something we can pass on to our customers and things to do. So I'm a proponent, and I'm also scared to death. So I just want to make sure that we do not stop bringing up in conversations the downside, because we have to look at this one differently than anything else. I believe, my personal belief, than any other technology we've ever had in our lifetime or in my lifetime. This is not the internet. This is not the thing. This is like a big brain, right? That we're going to tap into and everything we're going to do. And so how that big brain gets managed is my number one thing that we need to try to figure out how we do that.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I think this is just the starting point. It's the tip of the iceberg.
Yes.
For everybody out there, get involved, start to play with these tools, have an opinion, talk to your companies about where they're implementing it, train yourself where possible on artificial intelligence. It's here. It's not going anywhere. You don't need to be an expert or have a degree anymore to work with AI, to work in AI, to be aware of AI, to understand the impact of AI, to talk about AI, or to even have an opinion on AI.
Yeah.
So with that, I just want to thank you all so much. Without your points of view, without your knowledge, without your work in the space and technology and music and everything, we wouldn't have this group together coming at this conversation around generative AI from various different angles. I will add, for everybody out there, I will add everybody's handles in the follow-up notes. So if you want to find them on either LinkedIn, or for those that are on Twitter, or those that are on Instagram, if you want to follow them, there's great events happening. Each of these amazing people here are either touring or riding or whatever it may be. So follow them. And with that, thank you so much. I'm your host, Tiarne Hawkins, and thanks for tuning in for You and AI.
Thank you very much, Tiarne. Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
It was awesome. I love the conversation. Thank you for the knowledge. I just want to
Thank
learn.